Mr. Jayjack,
Hello.
how are you feeling, man?
I'm good. Antibiotics are a miracle of modern man.
Indeed.
I would be dead twice this year from strep throat, probably if it wasn't for antibiotics. So,
Did you at least manage to get feeling better by Christmas Day?
oh yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, they gave me a steroid as well, so it like takes the swelling down in the tonsils. So yeah, and those antibiotics work pretty quick. It's usually within like 24 hours. Within a few hours, you're actually feeling better. But last year, it was in January, right after Christmas. I got it so bad and I was on the road facing a storm and didn't know it was strep. I was just trying to fight it off and then got home and I was like, okay, I gotta go to the doctor and end up having to go on a IV because I was so messed up from
Oh,
it.
wow.
Yeah.
If you had to go on an IV, you know it's bad at that point.
Yeah. So, but this time I know the signs I know it's strep throat, how to tell that it's strep throat. And so early on, I was like, oh, I've got strep. So immediately I'm like, I'm going to the doctor. And, I had already felt like I was swallowing razor blades. So I was not in good shape anyway. But I was like, yeah, no fooling around this time. Straight to the doctor, get the antibiotics going immediately because there's nothing else you can do.
Oh, yeah, man. Well, I'm glad you were able to get out from under the weight of strep throat. And I know a lot of people are excited to have you here today to talk about something that we don't discuss a whole lot in the community, which is storm chasing in Canada. And
Yeah.
you, of course, are one of the, if not the authorities on storm chasing in Canada. So, really excited to have this conversation.
Yeah. It should be fun. I'm a permanent resident in Canada. So I'm not a born Canadian if you didn't know that. I grew up in the United States. So
Let me ask you something to get the conversation started with something a little lighthearted. Have you noticed yourself over the years after moving to Canada? Do you feel like you are starting to rub off on the people around you with your American habits, or do you feel yourself sort of becoming more Canadian every single year that you spend there?
uh I would say I'm becoming more Canadian for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I was already kind of leaned that way anyway because I grew up in northern Indiana and
Okay.
I was already I kind of into hockey and so I kind of had a love for Canadian culture before I ever lived up here. So yeah. And at there's a lot of stuff going on in the States that it's just like I don't even want to be a part of any of it. So it's like kind of nice to be up here away from all that. But not that Canada doesn't have its own problems with culture and politics and society and stuff. So
Hell yeah, man! Just got away from the fray. I'm taking a look at the graphic. Did you want me to put that up on the screen right now, or was that mainly for promotional use?
well no, is it possible for me to bring images up on the screen?
As long as you have it up like full sized on your computer, you should be able to screen share. And if not, let me click and make sure that you have that ability. If it doesn't,
Because if
you
not,
should. Because
I have another image as well. And then I was also going to bring up I got a couple of tabs on my browser I was going to open up, just pop open briefly, I think.
yeah, you should be able to share. I gave the coach
Well,
role, which is what you have the permissions to share your screen. So
I see the share your screen button, but I can't click on it.
interesting. Okay,
It's not active for me to actually activate.
change the topic. Um, see if I can. Usually Anna figures this stuff out for me. Um, all right, I'm gonna work
Oh
on
wait,
this.
hey, actually, hold on. I just found another button. Hold on. Let me see if this does it.
Let me send a message to our technical team.
Chrome tab, entire screen. Wait here. Okay, there's two different buttons I can use. Can you see my screen now?
Um, Not yet.
Yeah, it's not doing anything, I guess. This button doesn't change anything up.
Okay, well, I'm gonna figure this out, but I'm gonna throw a question your way to start things off. That way, it's just the highest level that we can possibly get to. As
Yeah.
far as storm chasing in the US and Canada is concerned, contrasted against one another, what would you say is like the number one biggest difference that you have to pay attention to in Canada, or something that maybe Canada doesn't have that the US has that we take for granted?
Um, hmm, the biggest thing. Well, I mean, there's a few differences. I guess I would say the biggest thing is that I mean it's kind of a two-part answer. There's two different forks here. That if you're still learning to forecast and you're not 100% confident in your forecasting abilities on your own and looking at weather models and data and making a forecast and you still utilize storm prediction center. I mean, even even when you are confident with your own forecast, you're still going to be probably using storm prediction center, right? Well, there's no storm prediction center in Canada. It's Environment Canada, ECCC, uh, and there's some big differences between them. I mean, the main, they serve the same function as to give out the alerts and warnings to the public when there's severe weather forecast. But the Storm Prediction Center in the United States is much more heavily budgeted and much more detailed, and a lot more is going into it. And the forecasts go out. We can get severe weather forecasting 7 days out with the 4 to 8 day or 8 days out, right? With the 4 to 8 day outlook. Environment Canada doesn't have anything like that. They have the next day storms and then the day of. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest differences. And then if you are comfortable in doing your own forecasting and you don't, just the tools are a little bit slightly different. Like, I mean, you still have weather models like the HRRR, and this is something I was going to get into during the conversation. Is that you have models like the HRRR, for example, and you can go ahead and use it up here in Canada, and it might be accurate, it might not, but its accuracy is a lot lower up here. It seems like than say down in the Southern Plains where it's like actually developed, like down in Norman, Oklahoma, and they're like speak it all for like forecasting the Southern Plains. And it seems like as you go further to the north, that accuracy kind of reduces a little bit. So you're using different tools up here, like um, instead of ARRR, I kind of use the NOM a little bit more up here for convective allowing, for example. And then maybe not even looking at convective allowing at all, like, uh, and just relying on, so down in the Southern Plains, I use convective allowing models very, very heavily in making a decision in a target. But up in Canada, I might be just looking at just the base ingredients like moisture, for example. Where am I going to find the best moisture at? I know there's some energy coming through, but where's the best moisture at? So that was kind of a long-winded answer to your question because a lot of this, like if we want, I can bring if you want to bring that graphic up, we can start going through that too if you want, or however you want to go through the conversation. Otherwise, I can just keep going and going and rambling if I don't have like some points to like work off of or something.
No, no, I definitely got you there, man. I got you. So I was talking to some folks from our team trying to figure out exactly what might be going wrong with the screen share. They said that you should have the ability to screen share. Is it still like grayed out for you, or if you
Oh,
try
so
like
there's two different things. There's a thing on the left that says video connected, and that is grayed out. But there's a button in the center. It says share your screen, and when I select share your screen, and I try to do entire screen, and then it lets me go through the motion and share, but nothing's seems to be happening. So,
interesting? Okay.
but I'm also in this Discord browser, so I don't know if that's part of the problem.
Yeah, maybe it is with the browser. I know we actually had some trouble last week with that. So don't worry about that, I guess for right now then, but that'll be
Did
good
that
to
one
know
work?
maybe to tell people to get the Discord app next time.
Yeah. Do you want me to send you my graphics then?
Yeah, if you want to send them this way, I'll pop them up on my screen and we can share it over here.
Okay. So you want me to just like send you a text message with them
Are
or
you
in
able to send them on
Telegram?
Telegram? Yeah, Telegram would be good.
Okay, so Canadian Prairie, in Canada. So that's obviously it's the north above United States here. See, I have in yellow letters there, Canadian Prairie. So you see if you're familiar with severe weather, which I think everyone is, you know the whole common um, theme of the warm air, warm, rich Gulf moisture coming up from the Gulf of Mexico, well, Gulf of America now, coming up into the Great Plains, clashes and meets with the cold, dry air, those blue arrows coming off from the west through the Rocky Mountains. Those clash in the Great Plains, and we get the severe weather in the Great Plains, which is a continuation all the way through from Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, the Dakotas, up into the Canadian Prairie. I consider the Canadian Prairie as a part of the Great Plains, an extension of the Great Plains. And a lot of the severe weather is influenced by the Rocky Mountains, and those Rocky Mountains, as you can see, go all the way up into Canada. There, you'll see Calgary listed there, and there is a little icon I've left there, a little blue icon by Calgary, and that is the westernmost, most violent tornado to ever be documented, which was documented by me in 2023 near Didsbury, Alberta. So you can see Tornado Alley goes way up there into Canada. And then for fun, I put another little marker down there in Florida, Fort Myers, which is the most southeastern tornado I've seen. So I think it's like 43 hours drive time between those two locations. So the Canadian Prairie is the prairie provinces of Canada. So it is there in Alberta, where Calgary is. And then if you move over a little bit, just above where it says Canadian, the ADIAN in Canadian is Saskatchewan. And then the next province over is Manitoba. And so those are your prairie provinces, and very much like the Great Plains of the United States, through Kansas, Nebraska, when you're driving through the Great Plains, slicing through, and you come into Canada, it's all very similar. So I figured I'd start off by talking first about my first experience chasing in Canada, and it kind of sets the basis for the rest of the talks and kind of coaching you on what to expect and what you can do and if you want to decide you want to chase in Canada. So my first experience chasing in Canada was 2018. So in 2018, I had been chasing for quite a while now at that point in the United States. We had radar scope. I was using radar scope. I was using Storm Prediction Center, all that stuff. Uh, Wanted to chase in Canada in 2018, and I had absolutely no idea what I was getting into, what I was going to do, how I was going to do it. I just knew that I'd heard that there was some severe weather setup that was going to happen in Canada, and I started driving north from at the time I lived in Austin, Texas. So started driving north. I actually chased. I think there was a severe setup one day in like Nebraska or Oklahoma on the way north. Worked my way up through the high plains, Colorado. Got to see some sights I'd never seen before. Eventually got all the way to Canada, and I crossed the border the morning of this severe weather setup into Saskatchewan. It's the first time I had been in Canada since I think like 1998 or something like that. So it had been quite a while. And because I hadn't been in Canada for so long, they took me in for questioning because I had all this camera gear and all this stuff. I just looked like this, I guess, suspicious character. Well, they grilled me at the border. Eventually, they let me in. So I get into Canada. And at the time, I believe Radar Scope didn't even actually have any Canadian radars at that time. So I was in Canada. I knew there was some severe weather coming. Had no radar. Didn't know about Environment Canada. All I had was my eyes in the sky, and I was like, "Well, I guess I'm gonna just try and stay as far east as I can and wait for the storm to come to me, and then try and just visually chase this thing." I wanted to see some loons, and I decided I was gonna go get some loons. Before I knew it, the big storm was coming, and I didn't know it was coming, but it was coming. But I kind of realized it was coming because I saw the sky starting to change, and I was like, "Oh crap! I drove all this way. I'm about to miss this Canadian severe weather setup." Thankfully, I got down in front of the storm soon enough. Didn't even know it was tornado warned. Big tornado warned supercells coming at me. Eventually, I see it coming because the views in Canada are fantastic, and this big monster supercells coming at me. I shoot a couple of videos of me standing in front of it, try to stay ahead of it. Actually, see one little needle tornado, and it just turns into this big, huge HP shelf cloud with super strong winds that sweeps across the prairie. And I try to ride it as far east as I can. And I get into Manitoba. Eventually, I stopped the chase because it was just moving too fast, big shelf cloud, and power is getting knocked out everywhere. Power poles coming down, and the power's going out, and I'm almost out of gas. And I'm like, well, I was supposed to try and stay the night in Saskatchewan, and I don't know. There's no hotels for like hours around. So long story short, I try to get to this hotel that I was planning to get to. I run out of gas. Reed Turner tweets out to try and save me and get some locals find me. They bring me some gas that was like 10-year-old gas. I put it in my car and it's chugging along, burning through this gas barely, but it gets me this little town in Saskatchewan. And that was my first Canadian storm chasing experience. So it was crazy and I had no clue what I was doing. So that leads into, if you want to throw up the next image, Gabe. So to summarize my first chasing experience in Canada, um, it was very different from the United States, especially back then, and things have come along quite a bit since then. Um, I mentioned the Environment Canada Storm Prediction Center. So that was one of the biggest differences between Canada and the United States. Up here, you got Environment Canada. Down there, you have the Storm Prediction Center, and just the amount of detail and the uh, how precise the warnings are, and the watches and whatnot. It's much better down in the States just because there's a lot more people down there being paid to work on it on a daily basis.
I am still
Another
I was just going to
what's
chime in and say I'm still here. I turned off my video just because my laptop was starting to get a little overheated with sharing the screen as well. But yeah, if you just give me a second whenever you need something changed over, I'll rush over and get it. And I just wanted to tell everybody in chat too, bear with me a little bit. You give people a Christmas season off, and all of a sudden everything goes to hell. We were supposed to have an audience coordinator like we normally do, pulling questions and putting them off to the side so I can ask Aaron. But I'm actually going to be playing that hat as well because it looks like we didn't have anyone scheduled for today. By the way, that's a joke. The staff at SCC is absolutely amazing, and it was definitely just a snafu with the rescheduling and whatnot. But if you guys just bear with me, I promise if you put questions in chat, I will go through. I will grab them all. I'll put them in our document so I can ask Aaron when we're done. So I just wanted to give everyone that reassurance that you're not typing into the void. Just because I'm going to be screen sharing though, I won't be able to actively give a reaction emoji or talk to you guys in chat while Aaron is going over stuff. So Aaron, back to you, and I'm going to go ahead and grab the questions that we have so far.
Yeah, and if you just want to throw that other image up now, that'd be fine.
Okay,
And I just
perfect.
talk over that.
Okay, beautiful.
So yeah,
So
so Environment Canada, that is the service up here. Radar and warning. So radar coverage is not as good down in the States. In fact, most of the time when I'm chasing here in Manitoba, I'm actually using the North Dakota radar station because it's closer and gives a better has a better image and resolution. So there is Doppler radar in Canada, but they're just I think there's two in Manitoba. There's one over by Winnipeg, and then there's one a little bit north of here, and then I think there's maybe two in Saskatchewan, one near Regina, and then maybe one by Saskatoon. So not as many radar stations, bigger holes. So the radar imagery when you're chasing, not nearly as good. So again, that's where it becomes important to hone your eyes for chasing when you're chasing in Canada. And just in general, when you're chasing in Canada, you may be in a radar hole or there's some radar holes in the States as well, like down in Texas, East Texas, Southeast Texas. So, actually, sorry, Southeast Oklahoma. So I would say that's the biggest difference between ECCC Storm Prediction Center and the watches and the warnings. So the warnings are generally much bigger here in Canada. You may have a tornado that is 60 miles away and you're getting a tornado warning for it. In the United States, it's much more precise. Now they've made a lot of improvements over that system over the last few years, especially last year. I noticed that the warning boxes were getting a lot more accurate. But still, there's still some issues with, down in the States, we have counties, and then here in Canada, they have municipalities, and some of those municipality shapes can be weirdly shaped, and they generally warn based on the municipality. And so you could get something that is not in the path of the tornado, is still getting warning right now, but at least it's not warning someone that's an hour away right now. So things have improved, but definitely room for improvement in that regard. But as a chaser, that doesn't really make a difference for you and your chaseability here in Canada. That's just more of a informational. If you are trying to relay information to the public, knowing that the information you're giving may actually be pretty beneficial because they think they're in a warning, but they're not actually in harm. So another big difference is that down in the States, when I chase down there, I'm using visible satellite a lot. Go 16. Go 17, I guess now is the current one. But the GOES satellites, which give that excellent view of looking down at the tops of the clouds, so you can look for the beginnings of a supercell developing. And that visible satellite that's developed by the United States, so satellites are owned by the United States. They're positioned to mainly look over the United States. Now, they do see the southern periphery of Canada and the Canadian Prairie. If you go far enough north into the Canadian Prairie provinces, then you lose visible satellite using those satellite resources. But I've never actually even chased far enough north to lose that visibility. But you will miss things that might be moving into the environment that you're chasing that are coming from up north there, not being able to see those. So just something to be aware of, but again, not too big of a deal. It's not going to really make or break a chase here. And then the weather modeling. Down in the States, HRRR, the NOM, GFS. Those are some of the models created by United States Weather Services. And then in Canada, we have the GDPS and the RDPS. Those are some of the Canadian models. I use all the different models, just like down in the Southern Plains, or the Central Plains. But as I was mentioning earlier, I've noticed, like with the HRRR being a little bit more performant down in the Southern Plains, and can sometimes struggle up here in Canada. Even the NOM, but I see the NOM is generally a pretty good model to use here in Canada. I'll use the GFS up here, of course, especially if I'm just chasing like real high level ingredients. Like I'm trying to figure out where the best moisture is going to be. I might just use the GFS. In fact, the image you're looking at, you can see there's a tornado in the background there. This is the tornado that was near Didsbury, Alberta. And my forecasting leading up to that event had been to use the Canadian model, the GDPS, and the GFS, both real high resolution models. So not convective allowing. I didn't use any cam at all. I used those models to try and figure out where I thought the best lineup of ingredients was going to be in moisture. Drove one day out to Alberta and drove right up to a tornado, nailed it, turned around, came back home, and didn't use a single convective allowing model. And I think at that time, it kind of segues into one of the things I wanted to bring up, is that it's important when you're chasing up here, before you actually even chase up, you're leading up to the chase, to be paying attention to the models and how they are performing in that area that you want to chase. So if I'm going to chase in Canada in 2 weeks, well, I'll probably be watching, running the models and seeing how they're running as I come up to that event. Because I want to see which one's dialed in. Is the herb been dialed in and it's actually nailing events leading up to it? So maybe I'll put a little more weight into it. Or is the nom, or are they both completely off and I'm going to ignore the cams completely? So I like to watch the models, how they're performing up here, in the days and weeks leading up to an event, just to, again, improve my own accuracy when digesting what the models are putting out. So and then so the next bullet point, weather setups. So Weather setups are can be a little bit different here. Down in the states, down in the spring, down in the southern plains, you get these big time froth ejections. It's big deepening lows. The big comma shape you see in the atmosphere, it goes ripping across the United States with severe weather on the leading edge, and then sometimes, occasionally, you get the winter weather on the north side. Um, or as what's going to be coming up here in a couple of days, we got a big storm system that's forming that going to produce a big time winter weather in the Great Lakes region, and then maybe a little bit of severe on the south end. So, but getting those big time spring lows that come blasting through. Um, you don't really get those up here in Canada. You don't have those big lows because by the time you're chasing here in Canada, uh, it's like June or July by the time it's warm enough. The storm setups to start coming up here. The jet stream has come up here, but you're just the setups are just a little bit different. You don't have the proximity of the Rocky Mountains, for example, to Manitoba. Uh, just and the Rocky Mountains kind of curve off to the northwest, so you kind of you don't get those big lows that form off the lee of the Rockies that come ripping through across the United States up here in Canada. So you're chasing a little bit more sometimes of more subtle setups, subtle disturbances of energy are coming through. It's a little bit more like chasing uh in like June or May, late May or June in the down in the plains when you don't have a big trough ejection, but you're just looking for those subtle outflow boundaries. So lots of like that, like looking for outflow boundaries left over from previous days storms, or maybe a Pacific front that comes ripping through, that brings some dry air, a little disturbance that interacts with. Um, the next thing that you're dealing with up here is that we're very far away from the Gulf of Mexico, which is that source of the moisture, the warm, moist air. We can get plenty of warm air up here in the summer. Um, but the moisture source, the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, sorry, just call it the Gulf. Sorry, I'm always calling it Gulf of Mexico still. Is quite far away from the Canadian prairie. So one of the so the way we fix that is that, well, not we, but the environment fixes that and still gets storms is I mean, and I say that we're far removed, but you could still get Gulf moisture could still make it up into the Canadian prairie, especially if you get a really strong storm system. Um, but it's not a guarantee. Like down in the southern plains, like if you're in the southern plains in April or May and you're got a storm coming, a low developing off to the west towards Colorado or something, like you can just feel it and smell it, and you can just see that moisture, just a fire hose ripping over the top of you. Down in Texas and Oklahoma on the night before a severe weather setup. Well, you don't get that here in Canada. You don't have that surge of moisture like that. So we have a lot of farmland up here, a lot of crops, and so you get a lot of evapotranspiration. The canola plants, lots of canola, and when you just have a sea of crops in that hot summer, those crops, for them to cool themselves down, they suck up moisture out of the ground through their roots, and then they release it through their leaves to try and cool the temperature down of the plant, and then that comes into the atmosphere, gets into the atmosphere as moisture, and then storms can actually utilize that moisture from the crops, the farmland, to produce storms, produce tornadoes.
Okay, Aaron,
So
I'm gonna stop you just for 1 second. Seems like a good place to pause for a moment. We do have an audience coordinator now. Top goober herself, Anna, has joined us. So, Anna, I'm going to put you up here on the stage. And real quick, just let you know the problem that we're dealing with. So, Aaron is using the browser-based version of Discord, and for whatever reason, the permissions aren't allowing him to share his screen. So he sent me the images that he's talking through at the moment, and also he has some links. I put them in our document. If you have that opened up, the Google Drive document for the questions that we use, the links are at the top of that. So he needs somebody to be sharing their screen while he's chatting, so that way they can see the visuals, since he's not able to do it. So I can handle grabbing the questions out of chat if you could just share your screen and just kind of set it and forget it until he's ready for you to pull something else up. Is that something you could do, Anna?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, sorry. I normally would have been fine just running it myself, but this is the one instance where since we need to have the screen share up, I do definitely need a third person here.
Okay. Which one are we opening up?
So first of all, let me send you upload a file here. So these are the two graphics. I believe he's already finished with the first graphic, Aaron, if that's
Yeah.
correct, Canadian Prairie
Yeah.
one. So that second chasing with the EH, love the little touch there. I couldn't chime in because I was muted, but I had to tell you I absolutely love that. You're chasing, eh? So that one, Anna, is the one he is talking about right now. And then, like I said, those two links are over in our shared questions document. I'll just leave them at the top of the document for you, and I will grab all the questions. If you can just go ahead and start off by sharing your screen with that second image that has all the text on it.
Yeah, let me just get it to where I can open it up without it covering my entire Discord.
Perfect. And yes, I do see Kazaki. You said earlier I'm on the struggle bus. That is correct. I'm not used to being the one trying to figure out the technical stuff. That is Anna. She is great at that sort of thing. So so relieved to have her here right now. Really
There we
appreciate you, Anna.
go. Alrighty.
All right, can everybody see that all right?
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. And then Anna, do you want to full screen that maybe?
This is as full as I can get it.
Okay, is that good enough, Aaron?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead.
I just clicked on the little box myself, but do you want me to answer Kazaki's question while we're paused here?
Yeah, yeah. If you've seen any questions that I haven't been able to get to, by all means, go ahead and answer them right now if you'd like.
Yeah. So what month, the question is what months is generally considered Canadian tornado season? Generally, June. So the earliest I've seen a tornado in Canada is June. They sometimes happen in May and back in Alberta. It gets warmer there sooner. And so you get some storm systems there a little earlier. And then through the summer, June, July, August, even to September, potentially even October, you could get some storms on the as a second season. But yeah, pretty much through the summer. So okay. So do you want me to jump back in where I was at then?
Yeah, if you want to jump back
Okay.
in now that she's sharing, I'll go ahead and pull any questions or anything out of the chat, and
Okay.
then we can ask those once you're finished with that graphic.
Okay. So, weather setup. So we talked about the Gulf moisture and the word of the day, evapotranspiration, which is the release of gaseous H2O into the atmosphere from plants. Um, we talked about big lows. You get those big lows down in the States versus up here a little bit more of the subtle disturbances. So looking for outflow boundaries. Um, so yeah, so I guess that's pretty much we covered all that. Chasing logistics. So I would say this is arguably the most important one in Canada, just because it's a little bit different on the prairie than it is down in the States. So the speeding, I didn't list this. So obviously your speed limits they're driving in kilometers per hour here in Canada, not miles per hour. So if you see 100, you can't go 100 miles per hour. That's 100 kilometers an hour, which is about 62, 63 miles per hour.
Are there any
Um,
chasers, by the way, that have been unfortunate enough to be screwed over by that?
I don't think anyone's that dumb, but I mean, there's probably a few that could possibly fall for that one. But no, I haven't seen anyone do that. I used to like my first time I entered Canada, I made a joke about it. I like to make jokes playing dumb, and I played some joke like, "Oh, I can go 100 miles per hour." So, and some Canadians actually thought I was serious. You're like, if you do that, you're gonna end up in jail here in Canada. So, Canadians are really friendly here, so don't worry about Canada. Everyone is super friendly here, so I will mention that as one of the chasing logistics. Um, You heard my story about my first chase ever here in Canada. So I basically ran out of gas. I stopped in a little town because I didn't want to run out of gas between towns, but uh, you can run out of gas here in Canada if you don't play your cards right when you're chasing. It's not a bad idea to carry a spare. When I first was chasing in Canada, I used to carry a spare 5 gallon gas can. I had strapped to the roof with gas in it just in case, just an emergency gas. But I've kind of learned where I can get gas and how far I can go. And it's funny is that when you chase the Canadian Prairie, you there's not as many roadways and road network, and you've got the United States border just to your south that you're kind of pinned in with. So you chase a lot of the same roads and areas. So you kind of learn your limits with gas and whatnot, but it's definitely important to keep that mindful. And I would say, pay attention to, there's these things called a card lock. It'll look like you can get gas at it, but it's actually for people that the community, and you have to have a card and access to get gas, and you won't be getting gas from it. So don't rely on a card lock. You're going to have to rely on an actual gas station, like an Esso is one, ESSO, Petro Canada, or the co-op gas stations that are not a card lock. So,
Wait. Tell me a little more about this card lock thing. What on earth is that?
well, they have a lock on the gas pump. And so you have to pay into like the community to have access to the gas, and then you can access it. So that no one can not just anyone can come along and use their gas up from the community.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a really I guess that's a really efficient way to do it when you're dealing with populations that are way out, far away from civilization, so that way they don't have
Right.
to put a gas
They don't
station
want
out
to they don't want a horde of chasers to show up and then suck all their week's worth of gas, right? And then
there.
but they have card locks down in the States as well, in the Northern Plains up here, just across the border. So it's kind of a rural thing here out west. So hotels again, and just because of gas, there's not a lot of gas stations. Well, there's also not as many hotels. So you might have to drive a couple hours after you chase to get a hotel. Um, so just something to keep in mind, a little bit different there. You have Holiday Inns, but those are going to only be in like big cities like Winnipeg. If you're going to stay in a hotel on the prairie, you're going to be staying in like Super 8 or I mean, that's the big one, probably Super 8s, or there's a couple other little ones out there. Paper straws. So in Canada, you cannot get a plastic straw at the fast food restaurants. You're gonna get a paper straw. So if you like to suck on your drink when you're driving for the long ride, bring your own metal straw because your paper straw will disintegrate into your drink. And other chasers. So this is one of the pros we'll talk about down there, but there's not a lot of other chasers here. It's a little bit fewer and far between. So if you are reliant on other chasers, it just makes you feel more comfortable that there's other people chasing around you. Don't expect that because it's a little bit more open up here. And then the border becomes a big obstacle. So if you follow a lot of my coaching stuff, I talk about paying attention to rivers and calculating where chaser convergence might be, lakes and stuff, other obstacles. Well, up here, a big obstacle is that border. Um, you either got to be north of it or south of it. And if you need to get on either opposite the other side of it to chase the storm, well, you're gonna have to plan ahead of it because there's only so many crossings along the border to get from Canada in the United States. They're not all open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you got a storm potentially coming. So you got to decide where you're going to chase ahead of time sometime. And that might be mean that you pick wrong and you miss a storm, or maybe the storm just rides right along the border and you really can't get underneath it at all because there's no roads right on the border itself. So yeah, the border becomes an obstacle. Yeah. And then talk about, so why Canada? Why chasing in Canada? Well, one of the biggest reasons is that in the United States, the peak season for chasing in the United States is, we start chasing March, maybe even earlier than that if you go down in the southeast, through April and May, and then into June and July, things start to kind of tail off. And generally, some years there's nothing to chase at all. Once June or July hits, you get that death ridge that comes into place, and we get no severe weather, drought, hot, dry air. But we still get storms up in Canada through the summer, so it allows you to extend your chase season if you chase down in the States and you want to continue chasing through the summer. Amazing views up here. So you get a storm that goes up, and I even just last year or something, I remember seeing a storm and it was like 60 miles away, and I could see it from when I drove right outside of town. I could see the base of it. Like I felt like I was like just a few miles away from it. So the views, exceptional views here on the prairie, makes for great chasing. It's nice and it's remote. It's empty, and um, for me that is bliss. So yeah. So those are like my main points. I don't know if,
I have a
you
couple
know, if you
questions for
wanna,
you based
yeah,
off
if you
that.
wanna toss that, yeah.
So, just a few things as you were going all over all of that. I jotted down some things that piqued my curiosity. So, you talked a little bit about how like gas station stores few and far between. Are there any like last ditch emergency services once you get way outside of civilization? Like, you may have to wait 4 or 5 hours in the States, but you could pretty much always call AAA and someone will eventually show up to help you. Like, what sort of last chance safety nets are there, if any, once you get into Canada like that?
Well, Canada does have CAA, which is like instead of it's the Canadian version of that. So I don't know if they have a partnership or not. So, um, but yeah, so there is that. But I mean, there's and this actually makes me think of another point that I should have brought up, is that things close down early here in the Canadian Prairie and the Northern Plains. And a lot of these tips I'm talking about is not just for Canadian Prairie. It is also for, North Dakota, chasing the Dakotas and stuff, because it's very similar life there as it is in here. But, a lot of these towns, everything shuts down by 6, 7 p.m. Um, and then that's it. Right. So, but, there's always, if you're definitely in trouble, you can call 911 and whatnot. There's all those services. But yeah, outside of that, I mean, you gotta. When I chase in Canada, I have, and just in general, not just Canada, just anywhere in the Great Plains. I always travel and chase if I can with with a survival kit, with enough stuff that I can survive on my own for a few days if I get stranded in the middle of nowhere on a dirt road chasing a tornado or something, right? So that means food and water and everything to be able to self rescue and self sustain myself. I would recommend having with you when you're chasing the Canadian prairie. So,
Very good advice there. Very good advice. Talk a little bit about, if you could, the monetary benefit from capturing storms that no one else is around, because I'm guessing that just Canada itself is going to have less chaser convergence, less people that are actually capturing media. And then if you travel further north where the conditions get even more perilous and there's even less resources for you to actually figure out what's going on, I'm guessing it could potentially be that you're the only person on a storm. And so, um, is there the same type of monetary benefit as when you're chasing in the US and selling to US media, or how does all of that work?
yeah, I mean, it depends on, yes and no is the answer to that. So, obviously, there's benefits. If there's less people, your footage is going to be more sought after. But just for the nature of being up here, it's not. So even in US media, they really don't care about tornadoes down in the United States unless it hits a house or hits someone or something, a city, and then it blows up in the news, right? Like the US media doesn't really pay attention, or people don't care about tornadoes like they do like hurricanes, for example. So it's even less so in Canada. But if you get a big time tornado, um, and I'm not saying even a tornado that actually causes damage, but just a big tornado near a big city, like on a big day, like the Canada Day tornado I intercepted in 2023. Um, it was way the westernmost violent tornado, middle of nowhere, so far away from the United States, but it kind of became world news, and it was in all over the news in Canada. I think because it was Canada Day, right? So that kind of made it blow up a little bit more as well. Um, so yeah, so obviously there's benefits if you get something big and there's not as many people, then that gonna leave more meat on the bone. Um, but that being said, because it's Canada, there's less media desirability for consuming that content. So
Makes sense, and that's kind of what I was thinking as well. As seems like in the USA, at least, there's like a strong fascination with the public and the media as a result of it with different weather phenomena. And I just didn't know if that was going to translate to Canada either. Like if you get, you know, footage of a flash flood or something, is that going to be something that gets gobbled up by all the brokers, or how does that work?
yeah, no, I think I did. Yeah, it all depends. If it's a big event, big tornado, then yeah, then they might. But I don't work through brokers anyway. I do all my own licensing and stuff. So
Based, Aaron, love it.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, last question I had before
Well,
I'll open it up.
I can do that part of the job myself and better. So there's no reason to
You know,
outsource.
that's maybe something that we should have a session on, maybe, down the road, few months, a year or so, because I think a lot of people might benefit from knowing how to do some of those things themselves. That way they don't have to get raked over the coals with fees and surcharges and all that other jazz when they're trying to sell their footage.
Yeah, exactly.
So the last question I had here from that graphic that you were sharing is related to the Hudson Bay. I know that the moisture source in the Gulf is far away, but do you ever have events or opportunities where there's actually moisture streaming in from the bay that can actually trigger a severe event, or are the kinematics of the low levels just such that that'll never happen with that particular source of moisture?
Yeah, no, I think it's too far away and too far north and far. Yeah, I wouldn't see that being happening. But what we do get is in Manitoba we have Lake Manitoba and Lake Winnipeg, and they're pretty big bodies of water. They're kind of like Great Lake size bodies of water. Um, and they all put off like a little sea breezes and stuff. And I've seen those boundaries, storms interact with the boundaries, the sea breeze, and cause spin ups and stuff. And they also cause lake effect snow, those lakes here in Manitoba. So yeah, but I don't. Yeah, I wouldn't. I've never seen moisture get pulled from Hudson Bay. It's probably too cold.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is you'd probably have to have some sort of, like, at least like relatively unprecedented heating event that far north for that air to actually be able to do anything.
Yeah,
I'm looking at Lake Winnipeg, or Lake Winnipeg. I'm looking at Lake Winnipeg right now, and yeah, that's a lot bigger. I don't know how I never noticed that, but that's like a sixth Great Lake basically.
yeah, they're big. They're big lakes. Yeah, for sure. They're not deep,
Interesting.
but they're large bodies of water, and they put out those little sea breezes roll off, little rolling boundaries of air come rolling off of there. Get things spinning a little bit more sometimes.
I think Anna had a question. Anna, if you want to hop on here real quick, or something you wanted to share.
Yeah, so I actually went onto Google to look up if CAA and AAA have a partnership, and they do. So across North America, if you have CAA, you can use it in America, and if you have AAA, you can also use it in Canada.
Oh,
There you
very
go.
cool. Very
Yeah,
cool to
I
know.
figure because
As
their logo looks the
yeah.
same basically.
Yes, I was like, "You know what? Since Gabe mentioned that, and as someone who's had to use AAA relatively recently, I'm like, that's probably a very important thing to bring up and let the audience know if any Canadians come down to the US or if any people from the US go up to Canada."
That's who we really need to get a sponsorship with, is AAA, because I feel like every storm chaser should have at least the basic package of AAA.
Subscribe to Chaser Academy and you get a AAA package.
Yeah, we need to work something like
Yeah,
that.
that would be sweet.
Folks, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I think, Aaron, you had some links that you wanted to pull up. Maybe we can
Oh
move along to
yeah,
those now.
yeah. Do you want to click on the? So I just wanted to show like some of the examples. Maybe the COD one, the satellite one
The
first.
COD? Alright,
Yeah.
I got that. Let me open that up really quick.
And Aaron, while we're getting that pulled up, we do have a question from Jeremy Perez. He asked, "How smooth or congested do the border crossings tend to be? Like, is there any additional lead time a person should give themselves if they're chasing like the day of?"
Yeah, if you take the border crossings, in the prairie, they're pretty. It's not a very long wait. I mean, there could be every once in a while I'll get like 6 or 7 cars backed up in front of me, but for the most part, it's usually if you budget a half hour time to get through the border, that should be more than enough, like exceedingly more than enough. Um, and it'll save you in those times where it doesn't. But if you go to a border crossing, that's more like the one straight south of Winnipeg. That one might be a little bit busier, right on I-29. But any of the ones that are out in the middle of nowhere are pretty pretty fast. But you got to pay attention to which ones. Not all of them are 24 hours by 7. So, but it's usually pretty smooth. It's they present your passport and they'll ask you some questions like what you're doing, coming here to Canada for, where you're staying, where you're going, how long you plan to stay for, if you're bringing anything with you and planning to leave anything behind. Um, and if you look suspicious, they might ask you some more questions. I don't know, but if they see anything, they might pull you in for secondary questioning. Which again, that happened my very first time ever coming into Canada. I think because I had a bunch of camera equipment up front on my windshield and stuff, and they were worried about me coming into Canada to work. And I was like, no, I'm just a social media guy, just chasing storms. And but yeah, I had to go and like bunch of questions. A lot ended up taking like an hour, and they searched my whole vehicle and stuff. But obviously I didn't have anything. But I had Texas plates at the time, so I think they were worried about guns. So they were looking for guns in my car. Maybe I don't know.
That's actually a really good piece of advice, Aaron, because people may be accustomed to traveling with certain items, firearms, substances that would be legal in different states in the US. But I'm guessing when you cross the border to Canada, you have to really make sure that you are going to be adhering to the local laws of whatever province you're crossing into.
Oh yeah, for sure. And Canada, for example, you mentioned substances. Cannabis is legal in Canada, but you still can't bring it across the border either direction.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Can you, if you do have something like a substance in your vehicle, can you discard it and then continue into the province, or do they turn you away?
I don't know. It's a good question. Like, I mean, it might depend on which state you're coming up through. If you're in North Dakota, it's going to be illegal, right? But if you're in Washington State, it's probably whatever you have is probably legal in that state.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they might just turn you away or discard it in Vancouver if you tried to cross there, but if you tried to cross into Manitoba with something, then maybe they might send you to the other border. And I don't know. That's a good
Yeah,
question.
man. I would say probably the best answer would be don't try it, right?
Yeah.
If you're gonna cross the border to chase storms, just make sure you're on the up and up.
Yeah. Yeah.
From what I know,
Exactly.
actually, because I studied law enforcement for a while, actually, it depends on the amount, pretty much. If it's personal amount, you can discard it, but if you have, like, a pound of weed, then
Yeah.
you'll
Then it looks like
probably
you're
be
trying to,
arrested.
yeah.
Yeah,
Then it looks like
yeah,
you're trying
definitely
to
don't make it
sell.
look like you're trying to distribute. That's probably going to get you more than just a simple search and a few extra questions. So
Yeah.
I see
Well, so,
Kazaki. Oh, go ahead,
oh,
Aaron.
oh no, no. I was just going to say you had the satellite image up now. I
So,
was
a
just
question
going to,
from Kazaki before you get started on that. He wants to know: is there any specific province that you prefer to chase over others, and why?
yeah. So I really like, I mean, I like all three prairie provinces, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. I like them for different reasons. I like Manitoba because it's close to home. I like Saskatchewan because it's just, it reminds me a lot of, um, it's Montana because Montana's right there. So that landscape and stuff. I'd say it's probably Alberta. I really like Alberta. I guess because I really like chasing uh close to the Rocky Mountains and the foothills and having that. I like down in the States, one of my favorite things to do is to chase a setup when it starts in Colorado in the first severe days in Colorado and following it maybe even from the Rocky Mountains east across the United States, across the Great Plains. So you kind of get that when you chase Alberta. It's kind of like chasing Colorado. So I would say yeah, it's probably Alberta. It's pretty country. I like the province. Um, yeah, Alberta it is.
Excellent. All right, Anna, you've got that pulled up. Thank you. And if you want to dive into that satellite imagery.
Yeah, so this is a visible satellite. So We're looking from space down at mostly the United States, and seeing the tops of the clouds. Now, as you can see, there's a little bit of Canada that's visible there. And then it's the little like a black semicircle there. Can't see anything past that point. So that's kind of the limit what I was talking about with the limitations with using visible satellite. Now I'm sure there's some kind of satellite out there that you could probably see more of Canada. But it's probably not as high a resolution. It's probably not updated as often and whatnot. So it's not really useful for storm chasing. But again, as you can see, that image goes the satellite. If you look at if Manitoba is the province that's straight above North Dakota and Minnesota, and you can see the two lakes in the center there, and that satellite imagery goes right through the center of those lakes. So
You want me to
anything,
zoom in on it?
yeah, maybe zoom into that area there. Oh, maybe it won't let you zoom in. Oh, it kind of is.
Come on, it won't give
Well,
you a thing to
that's
slide left to
probably
right.
good right there.
There we go.
Yeah, that shows it enough. But yeah, it's right where she just showed. That's Manitoba. The next province over to the left is Saskatchewan. Next one over to the left of there is Alberta. So you can see the majority of the province. But it's just something to be mindful of. If you do end up straying further north from there, you're going to lose that visible satellite, and you're probably not going this. I don't even really stray that far north to chase, just because the road network gets few and far between. The gas stations are even fewer and far between. So just gets incrementally tougher to chase the further north you get, both infrastructurally and a lot of forest and stuff when you go way up north there. So
Maybe bring an extra canister of gas with you.
that's exactly right.
Now, have you ever had a circumstance where you were chasing and you were sort of on that threshold and you had to let storms go because they were moving into terrain that you didn't want to get mixed up in?
Definitely, yeah, terrain. Like, if here in Manitoba, I can only chase so far to the east, and then once you get pretty far east, the farmland turns into the Canadian Shield, which is like rocky trees, and then the Great Lake kind of landscape takes over. And it goes from open fields to just trees and rocks and lakes, and it's really, you can't chase it. There's just no road networks, and usually by the time storms are coming through there, generally they have formed further out to the west, and by that time they're just mostly like shelf clouds and stuff. So, and then do we want to bring up then the other link I had was the model, just pivotal weather. I was just going to show the
Yeah, let me pivotal. There we go.
yeah. So if you that drop down on the first blue button on the left, it says GFS right now. If you click on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's list all the different models, and off to the left there, you'll see GDPS got the little Canadian icon.
There it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you just click on that. So it's just it's the Canadian version of the GFS. You're looking at high level. If you want to put it, scroll up a little bit.
Yep.
And then that third button on the right. Yeah, click on that. And then forecast loop on the left.
So here we
Top
go.
left, yeah. And then that little, if you just want to grab that little round ball there, yeah, and drag it back to the left. Yeah, so there's that big storm that's coming up. And then if you just want to hit the play button now in the center, we'll just let it play through. So there's that big storm system. So you can see it's very similar to the GFS, especially in this, when we're looking at this view, we're just looking at the surface type, precipitation type and rate, and seeing that low. But again, it's the Canadian Environment Canada's version of the GFS essentially. So I like to use it. I used it on the day that I chased Isbury. Again, I think I had been chasing up at that point, and the cams were struggling. So I was like, okay, well, the cams are going to be pointless. I'm going purely on surface observations. So looking at data that I was seeing from weather stations, and the GFS and the RDPS, the GDPS. Sorry, the RDPS is the net is also a Canadian model, but it's a little bit higher resolution than this one, so you can kind of dial that forecast in a little bit more. But I see the Canadian models actually do pretty good up here, so it makes sense. I guess, right? But
Yeah,
and that's
that was
a
gonna be my question was how well have you seen these perform? Like, is it this is all I have, so I'll use it, or is it okay, this is actually pretty helpful?
no, it's actually pretty helpful, and I like to and I'll compare it um with the nom. But I still use the nom for the convective allowing. So and the her, I still even use the her, even if like I say like, oh, it's been struggling. Even if it's missed the last 10 days in a row, I'm still gonna run it and see what it says, right? And and maybe it's not useful for that day's forecast, but it's another data point to keep in mind for the upcoming day's forecast as well. So um but yeah, but they definitely are useful. I like to use the Canadian models actually during hurricane season too. Like the GDPS is pretty good at forecasting hurricanes. So, and it has to be because I mean Canada gets hurricanes um in the Northeast, so up there by Nova Scotia. So
Have you ever chased a northeast hurricane event up there in Canada by Nova Scotia?
yeah, yeah, a couple of them. Usually by the time they get up there, they go extra tropical and they kind of lose their tropical characteristics. But a couple of years ago, I chased one and it was so close to making landfall before it went extra tropical, and literally like hours before it kind of converted and widened out and lost its eye. And I don't remember what hurricane that was now, um, but yeah, but it's a lot different than chasing uh hurricanes down in the Gulf. And but I mean, I was up there in Nova Scotia and we were strong winds and damage and but it was cold. So do you have any other questions?
Yes, right here from Kazaki. He wants to know, are the surface obs up there from Environment Canada? And just overall, how useful, helpful are they compared to what we have in the States?
Yeah, so let me just take a look at this now real quick. So I feel like I like to use the COD site that you want to go back to the COD site, Anna? We can bring that up.
Alrighty.
And at the
Hold on, let me probably zoom out a little bit more. No, that's the wrong
actually,
application.
I might send you another link. Hold on. Okay. I'm going to send you this link in chat. So I really utilize heavily the College of DuPage resources here in Canada.
I actually live really close to College of DuPage.
Oh, nice. Yeah, their weather data is, I mean, before there were all these fancy sites, like that was like the go-to site.
Okay, should be up here. It looks really weird.
Yeah. So if you click on, you can see in the top left, at the top there, regional surface data. So if you click on Canadian Prairies, so you can get into you can see Canadian Prairie data here through College of DuPage. And you can see, can you zoom into that at all?
Uh, let's see.
Maybe hold down. Yeah, there you go. So you can see
No.
there's the individual weather station data there. Um, so I don't even use, I don't even know if Environment Canada has any of their own like data like that available. So I just use the College to Do page up here. I also I use SatSquatch app, which I think is pulling the same data points. I have it up on my phone right now. I don't know if you can't probably can't see it, but
No, I could actually see it quite well.
oh, okay. Everybody can see that. Okay, well, so you can see, I like to use the app SatSquatch, which also has all those data points. Um, so College DuPage works really well up here for uh, Canadian data, and then you can also see it showing you fronts and stuff. So I find it useful for that, for trying to help find fronts here, especially when you're, you know, as I mentioned, down in the States, you have Storm Prediction Center. So down at the Storm Prediction Center, they're doing those updates 8 days out. They're doing updates the day of a chase, and the day of the chase, they're putting out what? They're putting one out like at 6 a.m., putting one out like 11:30 a.m. They're putting out another update in the afternoon, like 2:30 p.m. On a really, really big high risk day, they might do some special balloon soundings and forecast updates and stuff. So they're constantly monitoring, updating, and updating the forecast and giving the data out. They're putting out maps when they put out the convective discussions that show you where fronts are and all that stuff. Well, you don't get any of that in Canada, so you're fully relying on yourself to do it all. Um, so again, like this would be a good site to be able to see the current data as best possible where fronts and stuff are, when you don't have Storm Prediction Center feeding it to you. And again, and this is just, if you can forecast in Canada and you can chase in Canada, you could chase anywhere. So
So there's no like mesoscale discussions or things like that that are coming out on a
no,
yeah.
yeah, no mesoscale discussions, no, getting all those updates. That's it. And and another thing is like, we in the States, the Storm Prediction Center may not actually put the watch out until like an hour before initiation. And in Canada, sometimes they put the watch out the morning of. Um, so, and sometimes it busts, right? Like they'll put a watch out and then nothing happens, right? So it's, feels a little more like old school. It is definitely more old school chasing in Canada, but
What is the public perception then when it comes to storms? I know in the US, snow is probably the best example of this because it's so hard to forecast. People have this really adversarial relationship with forecasters because they said we were going to get 6 inches of snow and we ended up getting half an inch or something like that. With Canada issuing so few watches and maybe even issuing them before there's a clear cut idea of what the day is going to look like, are people conditioned to basically just ignore anything at all? And is that going to lead, or could it lead to a potential disaster where people just have no conception of the danger on a particularly high end day?
no, I mean, word spreads pretty well here. Like, I mean, this is a farming community here in the prairie, so farmers are pretty well dialed into the weather and if there's going to be severe weather or whatnot. Um, the average, not even average, I would say 99% of Canadians probably don't even know that there is Environment Canada or that they're putting out anything. Most of the warnings and watches and information is consumed from like the media, radio, and TV and stuff around here. So, and word of mouth. So, of course, you get on your phone though. They still get the warnings from Environment Canada, and that says so. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's wrong to say that they're not aware of Environment Canada, but because you get the warnings on your phone and stuff. But no, I don't see that. Like, there's no adversarial. Like, I don't. Not like down in the States. Like, it's a lot different up here. It's a little bit more relaxed.
So you don't have people like cursing out the local forecasters and sending snarky messages on social media and that sort of stuff.
No, not really. I don't really see it. No, not at all.
I think that definitely tracks with the perception that most people in the US have of folks in Canada, just much nicer in general.
Yeah, 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 for sure.
All right, I think
And
we answered this question a little bit earlier, but Aaron, if you maybe want to reiterate it, possibly build upon it. Ariz, spelled Aariz, like Aaron with Riz, I suppose. Not saying you don't have any. I'm just saying they specifically put that in their name. They ask, if Canada is so far away from the Gulf, where does the good moisture come from?
yeah, so um some of the moisture. So by the time storms are going on in Canada, we've had a bunch of storm systems coming through the states. They've been pumping up moisture. The Great Plains is potentially filling up with moisture. Maybe the whole Great Plains is laden with moisture. Like this past year, 2025. We were chasing late. I was chasing in North Dakota and all summer into the fall. So there wasn't really a moisture wasn't really a problem this past year. Um, again, so these storm systems comes that the Great Plains fill up with moisture unless you get a big storm system that comes and scours it out. That moisture can kind of fill in and just sit there and pull up. But again, like I said, we are pretty far away. Most of the time, moisture doesn't get that far north unless there's a big low up there in North Dakota or the Canadian border, and it's really pulling that moisture up. So, as I was mentioning earlier, in the summer we have a lot of crops here, and they pump out uh, a bunch of moisture through their leaves called evapotranspiration, and it's the way for the plant to be able to cool itself down in the summer heat, the summer sun. It drinks up the water from the ground, pulls it through the plant, and puts it out through the leaves to cool off, and then that becomes the like a sea basically of the canola seeds of moisture. So yeah, so the storms can tap the moisture from that, from just the lush crops and summer grasses, the prairie, the grassland on the prairie and stuff.
All right, folks. Well, we have about 10 minutes left. So if there are any final questions that you folks would like to have answered, make sure you toss those in here within the next 5 minutes or so. And Aaron, was there anything else that we haven't covered yet that you think we should go over?
And I was trying to think what else I should, if there was anything else. So talked about crossing the border. So make sure you have your passport. You need a passport to cross into Canada now. You used to only need a license back in the day. So
Well, I know you mentioned getting. Here's one that I'm thinking of. I know you mentioned when you get into like eastern Manitoba, it's kind of like a cutoff for where you would continue chasing because there's a lot of. I think you said there's a lot of urban area as well as the terrain getting cut off right at that point.
well, no, it's just mostly terrain, cut off lakes and
Okay.
rocks and trees and yeah.
So Ontario would be where there's a lot of urban area, right? And is that a place that is chaseable at all, or would you recommend staying away from that province?
No, I would recommend staying away from it unless you like chasing Michigan and Indiana and stuff. So it's basically like chasing there, right?
Okay.
Detroit. Yeah. And I mean, and that's our eastern Ontario. The western part of Ontario is a little bit more rural, but it's forest land and stuff like that. So Ontario is just overall is like would probably be yeah, it wouldn't be a good place to chase.
And then I'm guessing that holds even more true once you start getting into Quebec.
Yeah, I mean, the further east, it's just gonna be like going east in the states, right? Like, do you want to chase tornadoes in Pennsylvania and Virginia and Maryland and New York City? I don't.
Right,
But I
for
mean, I
sure.
would if I had to, if there was the right setup. But
Couple
yeah,
of good
but it's
questions here.
yeah.
Saywakin asks, Aaron, overall, do you like chasing in the States or Canada more? So I guess maybe if you could only choose one, which one would you choose?
Uh, I mean, that's hmm, how do I answer this? So I really like chasing in Canada. If I had to only choose one, I guess it would have to be Canada. But I like chasing in the States for other reasons outside of storms, just because there's um a lot more ground to cover and places to go and places to see and stuff. You got the Dakotas, Nebraska, Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma, then the high plains, New Mexico, Colorado and Montana and Wyoming, and they're all similar but different. And so I like all the different aspects of chasing storms through all those. And you really don't get that in Canada. So you just have Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. And they're all pretty much the same except for Western Alberta. So Yeah, that's a tough question. I don't know. If I was forced and I had, obviously, I would choose Canada because we're home. But I would rather chase. I would lean towards the United States because, as I said, lot more territory and places and stuff to do. So and see.
Interesting. I was not expecting that to be the answer, but if that's not a ringing endorsement for at least storm chasing in Canada once in your lifetime, I don't know what else is. Jeremy Perez asks, is the non-paved road grid pretty similar in quality to the Northern Plains?
Yeah, the non-paved roads are great here. Even when they're wet, they're pretty solid, good crushed gravel on them and stuff. So not and those like not a lot of soupy dirt roads like down in the Southern Plains and stuff. So yeah, the back roads are great here in Canada. I mean, in the Northern Plains, but especially here in Canada because I think there's probably less paved roads here in Canada than down in North Dakota. So, but yeah, they're all yeah, and they'll be if they're not paved, they'll have signs up that say uh dry weather road only, for example, or not maintained roads, so not to go down one of those if you're chasing a storm or in a storm. Uh yeah.
We'll end with a fun question. What are your top 3 storm chases that you've had lifetime in Canada?
The
They don't
top
have to be in any
3.
specific order.
Well, I mean, I know 2 for sure. So I'll just put them in order that they come to my head. So, uh the Scarth, Manitoba tornado in 2020. Beautiful tornado, beautifully carved out. Um, it was my first really good tornado intercept in Canada, and 2 days before my son was born. And then another big time intercept in 2023 in Didsbury, Alberta. Uh, Amazing tornado. I was on the ground for like a half an hour. I was there from birth to death of it. Same with the Scarth, there from birth to death of the tornado. That one was the Scarth one was only on the ground for maybe like 10 minutes or so. Alberta one was on the ground for a half an hour. Amazing tornado out there out west, just sucking up this rich black topsoil dirt there in Alberta. And then my third one, whew. I mean, I'm gonna go a little different for this answer. So, um, seen other tornadoes in Canada. I'm gonna actually say it wasn't just it was the whole chase experience for a couple of days. And this is why I chose Alberta. I should actually say I didn't really answer why I chose Alberta earlier when I chose Alberta as my favorite. So I had a chase out in Alberta, out in the foothills, magical foothills west of Edmonton. So when you get out there, it's the Rocky Mountains, and it's a lot of logging roads back there. It's a whole nother world back in there. There's all these trees and logging roads, and you're all alone, and it's just it sweats Canadian. Like it just feels like Canada when you're chasing in there. And I chased some supercells through there that tried to produce tornadoes. Actually, I think it did produce a tornado. I did get a tornado on it, a little weak tornado, but just amazing experience being back in the foothills of Alberta. So that would be my number 3 top chase ever, was just chasing severe weather in there. Not a single tornado itself, but just chasing in those foothills. So
I like that answer a lot because too often we get caught up on storm chasing equals tornado, and rightfully so, because for most people that is the end goal, is to get to see and document a tornado. But sometimes you just got to take a step back and appreciate the beauty of it all, and doesn't necessarily have to be a tornado, and that's a good thing because most of the time it won't be a tornado. So if that's where your expectations are, then you're just setting yourself up to be disappointed.
yeah, exactly. 100%.
All right, folks, we have come to the end of the session. Looks like we've got some positive feedback. People are saying that they're excited to give Canada a shot at some point. That was the primary goal of having this little conversation. And Kazaki says, I was not sure about chasing up there, but you, sir, have cemented it where I have to chase there at least once in my life. So
Definitely a bucket list. It should be on everybody's bucket list for once. Like, I would plan it. I would choose Alberta if you're gonna do it only once in your life, because then you can also turn it into a vacation in the Rockies there, like Banff National Park, real beautiful there, and do a little chasing and a little bit of sightseeing. So
And remember your
Hell yeah.
passport.
yeah,
Yeah, dude. I'm sure at least one storm chaser in the entire history of storm chasing has made the trip. They've planned everything out. They're good to go, and then they get to the border and don't have their passport. So don't be that guy or girl. All right, folks. Well, thanks again for joining us here today. Aaron, thank you, of course, for being willing to chat with us and go over this topic. Going to be really awesome. Um, Remember, the on-demand replay will be available 2 to 3 days after the fact, so keep an eye on the group coaching replays channel if you want to go back through and listen to anything again, or um, search through the timestamps, and maybe if you showed up late, you want to listen to the entire session. That'll be there for you. So you all have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll be back. I believe we don't have another group coaching session until the beginning of the year in 2026. So let me look real quick and just give you guys a definite answer on that. Yeah, it looks like Friday, January 2nd, we have group coaching with Trey Greenwood. I don't know if he's picked out a topic for that yet or not. I'll get that updated as soon as possible if he has. But yeah, you can come hang out with Trey and I and be a good time there. So thanks again, everyone, and you all have a wonderful day.
see you guys.
All right. See you all.